You wake up every day, put on your clothes, head to your job, answer emails, sit in meetings, check your phone, come home, watch a little TV, maybe scroll through social media, and go to sleep. Then you do it again, over and over. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in that routine you feel it. A dull ache, a whisper in your gut, that nagging sense that this isn't really you, that something is off, that this life you're living doesn't quite fit. Like wearing shoes that are a size too small, you can walk in them, but damn, it hurts. And here's the truth, most people are terrified to admit a lot of what you call your life was never really yours to begin with. From the moment you were born, you were handed scripts from your parents, your culture, your school, your friends, even the media. Scripts that told you who you're supposed to be, what success looks like, what's acceptable, what's realistic, what's safe. And without even realizing it, you started living by those scripts. You started performing rather than living. You learned how to fit in, how to please, how to meet expectations. And slowly, without even noticing it, you abandoned the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with your true self. You were taught to color inside the lines before you were even handed a crayon. And so you did. Because when you're young, love and acceptance are survival. You become who you need to be to get approval, to avoid rejection, to feel safe. You suppress your curiosity. You dial down your intensity. You say yes when you want to scream no. And you build a mask, piece by piece. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're human. And every human being has a deep biological drive to belong. But here's the kicker. At some point in your life, if you want to be fulfilled, if you want to live with passion, purpose, and fire, you have to wake up and ask, whose life am I really living? Because there's a lie you've been living. And the lie is that you have to keep doing what you've always done. That you're too old to change. That it's too late to shift. That comfort equals happiness. That you have to play small to be accepted. That your dreams are unrealistic. That your gifts aren't worth pursuing unless someone else validates them. The lie is that this version of you, the tired, uninspired, safe version, is all there is. That you peaked. That the best is behind you. That the world doesn't need the real you. That authenticity is dangerous. That conformity is easier. But you and I both know that's the voice of fear. That's not truth. That's a prison. And what's even worse, that prison doesn't have visible walls. You're walking around free, but you're shackled by invisible chains. Chains made of shields and have toes. And this is just the way it is. But deep inside, a part of you is screaming, this can't be all there is. This can't be the life I was born to live. And that part of you is right. There's a warrior inside you who's been silenced for too long. A dreamer, a creator, a lover, a fighter. Someone who came into this world with gifts that nobody else can offer. But the world doesn't reward your potential. It rewards your courage to act on it. So you have a choice to make. You can keep lying to yourself. Keep pretending that this version of life is fine, that mediocrity is okay, that settling is noble. Or you can face the uncomfortable truth. You've been playing a role. You've been living on autopilot. You've been checking boxes on someone else's checklist. And no amount of external success, no car, no house, no job title, will fill the hole that comes from abandoning your own soul. Waking up to this truth is not easy. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. It can feel like your whole world is coming apart. But let me tell you something, that breakdown is a breakthrough in disguise. The pain of living a lie is far greater than the discomfort of facing the truth. You weren't born to fit in. You weren't born to follow a script. You weren't born to live out someone else's dreams while burying your own. You were born to be real, to be bold, to be wildly, unapologetically alive. And that journey begins when you finally stop and say enough. Enough lying to myself. Enough pretending. Enough chasing things that don't light me up. Enough living like I have forever to figure it out. You want freedom. You want fulfillment. Then start by recognizing the lie. The lie that you have to keep being who you've always been. That's the door. That's where it begins. Rip the mask off. Stop performing. Look in the mirror and get radically honest with yourself. Because the truth, the raw, powerful, liberating truth, is waiting for you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You were not put on this earth to live up to someone else's version of success. And yet from the moment you could walk, talk, think, and dream, the world around you began shaping your idea of what you should be. It starts early. Don't speak too loud. Don't draw too much attention. Be polite, be smart. Not too smart. Be ambitious, but not too ambitious. And little by little, you begin to shrink yourself into the shape that fits everyone else's comfort. You start to live your life like a chameleon, changing colors to match the expectations of your parents, your teachers, your peers, your culture. You learn to adapt, to mold yourself into whatever version of acceptable they hand you. You chase degrees not because they light you up, but because someone said it's the smart path. You take the job that looks good on paper. You pursue a relationship because it seems stable, even though it doesn't set your soul on fire. You smile when you want to scream. You say yes when everything in your body is begging you to say no. And then one day, you wake up, look around, and wonder how the hell did I get here? You're living a life built on someone else's blueprint. And deep down, you know it. But here's the raw truth. Other people's expectations are not your responsibility. You weren't born to carry the weight of their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their rules. You're not here to live your father's unlived life. You're not here to satisfy your mother's need for security. You're not here to make your friends comfortable or your boss happy or your community proud if it means betraying who you are. And let's be clear, it's not about disrespect. It's not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about alignment. Because the moment you trade your truth for approval, you're no longer living. You're performing. You're playing a part in someone else's play. And the tragedy is, the world will never get to experience your authentic voice, your wild vision, your real contribution. Breaking free from expectations isn't easy. It's messy. It's painful. It might mean disappointing people. It might mean losing their applause, their support, even their love. Or at least the version of love they know how to give. But if the price of love is self-betrayal, that's not love. That's control. And control is not connection. It's fear in disguise. You have to be willing to stand in the fire of other people's discomfort. You have to stop trying to manage their feelings, their opinions, their judgments. Let them think what they think. Let them say what they say. Let them misunderstand. Because the alternative is far more dangerous. You spend your one precious life twisting yourself into 1,000 versions that are not you. And in the end, you lose sight of who you really are. Most people never escape the cage of should. They never stop to ask, what do I want? What do I believe? What makes me come alive? Because the second they do, fear shows up. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being alone. But here's the thing, freedom is not the absence of fear, it's moving forward in spite of it. It's choosing to value your own voice more than someone else's approval. It's recognizing that your life belongs to you, not your parents, not your spouse, not your boss, not your culture. And when you finally make that shift, when you stop living by other people's expectations, you become dangerous. Not in a violent way, but in a powerful, undeniable, fully alive kind of way. Because now you're not playing small to make others comfortable. Now you're not diluting your light. You're not asking for permission to be who you are. You are living truthfully, unapologetically, relentlessly. The world may not applaud that at first. In fact, it might fight it. People may pull away. They may try to guilt you back into the role they assigned you. But eventually, the right ones, the ones who see you, love you, and respect you, will show up. And the ones who can't handle your truth, let them go. Their absence will create the space for something real to grow. And let's be honest, how many times have you sacrificed your voice to avoid conflict? How many times have you played it safe, toned it down, said what they wanted to hear, all while your real self screamed from the inside? That inner scream, that's your soul begging you to break free. Because every time you betray your truth to meet an expectation, a piece of you dies, slowly, quietly. And eventually you look in the mirror and see a stranger. But you don't have to stay there. You can choose differently. You can decide today, right now, that your truth matters more than their approval. That your purpose is too big to be contained by someone else's limits. That your life is yours to claim. On Sunday. Not when it's convenient. Not when everyone agrees. Now, most people never stop long enough to ask the real question. The one that changes everything, what do I truly want? Not what's expected. Not what's impressive. Not what looks good on social media. Not what keeps the peace. But what lights me up inside, what makes my heart beat faster, what makes me feel alive. We live in a world full of noise. Everywhere you turn, there's another voice telling you what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, what kind of life you're supposed to build. And after years, decades of absorbing that noise, most people don't even know the difference between their true desires and the ones they've inherited. You convince yourself that climbing the corporate ladder will fulfill you. You talk yourself into believing that a steady paycheck equals purpose. You convince yourself that staying in a relationship that no longer brings you joy is what mature people do. You rationalize, you justify, you adapt. Until one day, you've built an entire life on a foundation that doesn't belong to you. And that's why getting honest about what you truly want is one of the most terrifying and liberating things you will ever do. Because the moment you admit the truth, you can't pretend anymore, you can't unsee it, you can't go back to sleep. The excuses don't work like they used to. The distractions lose their flavor. The fake smiles start to wear thin. Because deep down, you know you've been lying to yourself. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe you didn't even realize it. But at some point, the hunger for more starts to rise. But here's the truth. Getting honest about what you want means you have to be willing to disappoint people. It means you have to risk being misunderstood. It means stepping out of the identity you've spent years perfecting. It means admitting that the path you're on, maybe it was never your path to begin with. And that requires courage most people are too scared to summon. You have to strip away the layers, the titles, the roles, the achievements. You have to dig beneath the surface of what you've been told to value and ask, what do I crave? Not what's convenient, not what's safe, not what's socially acceptable. What do I crave? What do I fantasize about when no one's watching? What would I do if I knew no one would judge me? What would I pursue if I wasn't afraid to fail? Getting honest means looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I don't want this. It means being willing to walk away from the job, the relationship, the lifestyle, even the version of yourself you created just to get by. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because if you don't own your truth, your life will be a lie. Maybe a comfortable lie, maybe a beautiful lie, but a lie nonetheless. And don't confuse desire with impulse. I'm not talking about momentary pleasure or shallow fantasy. I'm talking about the deep, soul-level longing. The thing that keeps tugging at you year after year, the whisper you've tried to silence but can't. Maybe it's a creative fire that's been buried under bills and obligations. Maybe it's the urge to serve, to lead, to create, to heal. Maybe it's the longing for freedom to travel, to explore, to stop living inside boxes. Maybe it's something you can't even fully name yet, but you can feel it. Like a quiet achy that never quite goes away. You've been taught to doubt that voice, to push it down, to be practical, responsible, realistic. But here's the thing, what's realistic for someone else might be a prison for you. And only you can decide what feels like freedom. Only you can define what success means to you, not your parents, not your partner, not society, you. Getting honest means taking off the mask. It means confronting the fear that maybe, just maybe, you've been chasing the wrong thing. And that's okay, because once you see the truth, you can pivot, you can course correct, you can redesign your life around what really matters to you, not just what makes you look good or keeps people comfortable. You might find that what you truly want isn't bigger, louder, or more impressive. It might be simpler, more peaceful, more aligned. You might realize that you don't want the spotlight. You want solitude. You don't want more money. You want more time. You don't want attention. You want impact. But you can't find any of that if you keep lying to yourself. If you keep chasing what they told you to chase. If you keep ignoring the still, small voice inside you that's been trying to get your attention all along. So you ask the question, not once, but over and over again, what do I truly want? And then you sit with it. You don't rush the answer. You don't reach for what's easy. You listen, you go deeper. And then deeper still, because the deeper you go, the more the noise fades. And that's where the truth lies. That's where your fire is. That's where your real life begins. There's a cost to conformity, and most people never stop to calculate it. They think they're playing it safe. They think they're being smart. Fit in, stay in line. Don't rock the boat. Don't stand out too much. Play by the rules. Get the degree. Take the stable job. Say the right thing. Post the right photo. Wear the mask and smile on cue. And maybe on the surface it works. You get the approval. You get the check mark. People pat you on the back and tell you you're doing great. But underneath all of that, something is dying. Slowly, silently, day by day, your spirit begins to wither. That's the hidden cost nobody talks about. When you conform, you sacrifice a part of yourself on the altar of acceptance. You chip away at your own identity to fit into a mold that was never built for you. You lose your edge, your voice, your essence. You become a watered-down version of who you were born to be. And the worst part, you tell yourself it's okay. You tell yourself it's what adults do. It's what responsible people do. You sell your authenticity for predictability, and you call it wisdom. You call it growing up. But the truth, you weren't designed to blend in. You were designed to stand out in your own way, not for attention, not for ego, but because you carry something within you that nobody else does. A way of seeing the world, a way of creating, speaking, thinking, connecting, leading, uniquely yours. And when you trade that away just to be accepted, you're not avoiding risk. You're taking the biggest risk of all, living your entire life and never knowing who you really are. It doesn't just dull your dreams, it It flattens your emotions. You start living on autopilot. You wake up, go through the motions, meet expectations, follow the script, and maybe you don't even realize it at first because everything looks fine. You've got a decent job, people like you, you're not struggling. But there's this underlying numbness, this emptiness, this ache you can't quite name. That's the soul level cost of betraying yourself. That's what it feels like to be out of alignment. And make no mistake, conformity will always cost you more than authenticity ever will. Because authenticity may get you judged, but conformity will get you forgotten. When you hide who you are to make others comfortable, you're saying, my truth is not worth the discomfort it may cause. And every time you do that, you lose power. Not just the power to influence others, but the power to move yourself. The passion dies. The inspiration dries up. And you're left trying to remember what it even felt like to be alive. And then there's the regret. The deep, bitter taste of knowing you spent your years chasing someone else's dream, walking someone else's path. You did everything right and still feel wrong. You followed the rules and still ended up stuck. You met their standards but feel like a stranger to yourself. That kind of regret doesn't show up all at once. It builds quietly, over years of ignoring your instincts, silencing your voice, and playing small. What's even more dangerous is how subtle conformity can be. It sneaks into comparison. You scroll through other people's highlight reels, and suddenly you feel behind. Not good enough, not far enough along. So you change your direction, not based on your own vision, but based on their journey. You chase what they chase without ever asking if it matters to you. And now you're running a race you never wanted to enter, trying to win a game that doesn't even feed your soul. Conformity also robs the world of your unique contribution. When you suppress your originality, you're not just hurting yourself, you're withholding a gift from the people who need it most. There is someone out there who needs your perspective, your story, your creativity, your leadership. But they'll never receive it if you keep hiding behind the mask of what's acceptable. Playing it safe doesn't serve anyone. It creates a culture of mediocrity, where everyone is pretending and no one is truly living. And then there's time. Time is the most brutal price conformity demands. Every year spent living someone else's version of life is a year you don't get back. And one day, the urgency hits. You realize the clock is ticking, and you've been postponing your real life for far too long. You kept waiting for the right time, the right moment, for permission, for security, for certainty. And now you're standing at the edge of your life, wondering how you let it pass you by. It's easy to conform, that's why so many do it. It's easy to nod along, to be agreeable, to avoid conflict. But every time you silence your truth to make others more comfortable, a part of you slips away. You weren't born to be a replica. You weren't born to be a copy of someone else's idea of success. You were born to be real, to be bold, to be original. And the longer you wait to break free, the heavier the cost becomes. There's a power inside you that most people never tap into. Not because they don't have it, but because they're too afraid to live it. It's the power of authenticity. The raw, unfiltered, unapologetic expression of who you really are beneath the layers, beneath the masks, beneath the performance. It's not something you earn or achieve. It's something you uncover, something you remember, something you reclaim. Because authenticity isn't a destination. It's a return to self. From the moment you came into this world, you were real. As a child, you didn't question your impulses. You didn't filter your laughter. You didn't water down your excitement. You didn't hesitate to cry, to scream, to dance, to imagine. You were fully, boldly, freely. But slowly, the world started to chip away at that freedom. Be quiet. Sit still. Don't be weird. Don't be too loud. Don't be too soft. Be more like him. Be less like her. Fit in. Conform, blend. And like most people, you did what you had to do to survive. You adapted. You shaped yourself into whatever version made the most sense in the environment you were in. And it worked. You got approval. You got safety. You got acceptance. But the price, you began to drift from who you really are. And here's the thing. Authenticity takes courage. It's not the path of least resistance. It's the path of most truth. It's the willingness to say, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I stand for, even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it goes against the grain. Because the moment you stop performing, the moment you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you finally start becoming everything to yourself. There's a strength that comes when you stop needing external validation to feel valuable. When you know who you are and you're no longer willing to compromise it just to fit in, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because people can feel when you're real. In a world full of filters, curation, and branding, realness is electric. It cuts through the noise. It penetrates the surface. It moves people. And not just others, it moves you. Because when you're authentic, you don't need to hype yourself up to show up. You want to show up. You're energized by your own alignment. Authenticity doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you have it all figured out. It means you're honest about where you are. It means you show up with your whole self. Your truth, your vulnerability, your fire. And that vulnerability, that's not weakness. That's power. That's connection. That's what gives your life depth and meaning. Because when you live authentically, you stop building walls and you start building bridges. Real relationships, real purpose, real freedom. And here's what they don't tell you. When you live in your authenticity, life gets simpler, not easier. Simpler. You stop wasting energy trying to remember who you're supposed to be in every room you walk into. You stop pretending. You stop second guessing. You stop editing yourself in real time. You become consistent, grounded, aligned. And that alignment gives you clarity. You make better decisions. You attract the right people. You repel the wrong ones. You build a life that actually fits you instead of one you constantly have to squeeze yourself into. But authenticity will cost you. It will cost you the illusion of control. It will cost you the comfort of being liked by everyone. It may cost you relationships, jobs, opportunities that were only ever meant for the role you were playing, not the real you. But the trade-off will get you back. And that's priceless. Because when you are truly yourself, the right opportunities start to find you. The right relationships, the right work, the right experiences, they come not because you chased them, but because you became the person aligned to receive them. And let's be clear, living authentically doesn't mean you have to shout every opinion or expose every thought. It means that your actions, your words, your choices are consistent with your values. It means that you are congruent, that who you are in public matches who you are in private, that you're not constantly shape-shifting to please the crowd, that you're not living in fear of being exposed because you're not hiding in the first place. There's a deep peace that comes from authenticity, a peace that can't be found through performance, possession, or praise. It's the peace of knowing that your life is yours, that your choices are not being dictated by fear, by guilt, by obligation, or by cultural programming, that you are not a product of someone else's vision, but a creator of your own. And in that space, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, your creativity ignites, your leadership expands, your presence becomes undeniable. Not because you're louder, but because you're truer. You're no longer trying to convince the world of your worth. You're embodied, fully, unapologetically, authentically. Radical self-discovery is not a luxury. It's not something you do once you've got the time, once life settles down, once everything feels perfect. It's not a hobby for the spiritually curious. It's a necessity for anyone who wants to live a life that is deeply aligned, unapologetically bold, and fully alive. If you want a life that doesn't feel like you're just checking boxes, going through the motions, or wearing a smile that doesn't belong to you, then you have to make the commitment, not casually, not conditionally, radically. Because the truth is, most people never discover who they really are. They adopt identities, beliefs, goals, even personalities that are stitched together from their upbringing, environment, fears, and societal expectations. They become a college of what others told them they should be, rather than an original creation of who they were meant to be. And it works until it doesn't, until there's a breaking point. A moment where the outer life no longer matches the inner truth. And it's in that moment, if you're honest, where the journey begins. But this is not a surface level process. This isn't about figuring out what you like to do on the weekends or what your top 5 strengths are. This is about going deep. It's about ripping off the labels, the assumptions, the expectations, and asking the question most people are too afraid to face of who am I really? Without the role, without the mask, without the applause, without the pressure to be anything other than real. And radical self-discovery doesn't happen in your comfort zone. It requires disruption. It requires that you break the routine long enough to hear your own voice again. It requires that you stop numbing and start listening. Because underneath the noise, the distractions, the endless striving, there's a truth inside you that's been waiting to be heard. But you can't hear it if you never slow down. You can't find it if you're constantly trying to prove something. You have to pause. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to create space for your own becoming. This process demands honesty. Brutal honesty. You have to be willing to admit what's not working, what doesn't feel right, what feels out of alignment. You have to stop lying to yourself just to keep things familiar. You have to let go of the stories that have kept you stuck. The story that you're not enough, that it's too late, that your voice doesn't matter, that your past defines your future. Because those stories, they're not truth. they're habits. And habits can be broken the moment you commit to seeing clearly. And clarity doesn't come all at once. Self-discovery is a process of excavation, layer by layer, year by year. Sometimes it's loud and dramatic. Other times it's quiet and still. But if you keep showing up, if you keep asking the right questions, you'll start to notice something. You'll start to feel lighter. You'll start to make decisions that feel rooted in truth, not fear. You'll start to speak with a voice that doesn't tremble. And it's not because you've arrived. It's because you're finally aligned. The world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs people who know themselves. Because when you know yourself, you don't just live differently, you lead differently, you love differently, you create differently. You stop chasing validation and start standing in conviction. You stop mimicking and start innovating. You stop fearing failure because you understand that failure is part of the unfolding. It's feedback. It's part of your evolution. And here's what you discover along the way. Most of the limits you believed were real were never yours to begin with. They were inherited, absorbed, projected onto you by people who were carrying their own pain, their own fears, their own limitations. And the moment you wake up to that truth is the moment you reclaim your power, because you realize you're not broken, you're just buried beneath layers of noise, judgment, and conditioning. But now you've got the tools. Now you've got the awareness, and now it's on you to dig, to go deeper, to question everything until what's left is pure. Until what's left is you. You begin to reintroduce yourself to yourself. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. You start exploring your values, not the ones you inherited, but the ones that ignite your soul. You look at your desires, not the ones you were taught to want, but the ones that feel like oxygen. You investigate your patterns, your wounds, your conditioning. And you don't do it to punish yourself. You do it to liberate yourself. Because you know you can't transform what you won't own. You can't elevate what you won't examine. And as you commit to this journey, day after day, truth after truth, you begin to walk differently. You begin to live with a depth that other people can feel. You start to trust yourself in ways you never imagined. Not because you've got all the answers, because you become someone who's not afraid to ask the questions. That's the power of radical self-discovery. It changes how you show up. It changes how you think, how you love, how you create, how you lead. It's not a straight path. It's not a perfect process. But it is the only path that leads to the kind of life that feels fully lived. Once you've tasted the truth of who you are, once you've caught even a glimpse of your real path, the life you were meant to live, there's only one thing left to do: take relentless action. Not someday. Not when it's convenient. Not when the stars align now. Because clarity without action is just fantasy. Dreams without movement are just stories we tell ourselves to stay comfortable. Your path isn't something you find by thinking about it. Step by step, day by day, with full force commitment and zero apology. Relentless action is not about being busy. It's not about doing more, grinding harder, or chasing chaos. It's about choosing powerfully with intention. It's about knowing what matters and putting your energy where your values, waking up with a sense of urgency, not panic, but purpose. You realize that every single moment you spend waiting, doubting, second guessing is a moment you never get back. And when you know what's at stake, when you finally own the fact that this life is yours, you stop negotiating with fear. You stop dancing with hesitation. You get up and you move. Forward. Always forward. It doesn't matter how small the steps are. What matters is the consistency. What matters is that you keep showing up even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. That's the test. That's the filter that separates the ones who only want it when it's easy from the ones who are hungry enough to stay in the fire. Because the fire is where transformation happens. The discomfort, the uncertainty, the pushback, that's where your grit is forged. That's where the old parts of you burn away and the real parts of you rise. You don't need every answer. You don't need a perfect plan. You need momentum. You need a decision. One decision backed by action is more powerful than 1,000 ideas locked in your head. Stop overthinking it. Stop waiting for the fear to go away. It won't. Fear doesn't vanish with clarity. It vanishes with motion, with evidence, with courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward in spite of it. Every time you do, you train your nervous system to handle more. You raise your threshold. You expand your capacity. And suddenly, what once felt impossible becomes your new normal. There will be resistance from your own mind, from the people around you, from the old version of yourself that's still clinging to comfort and familiarity. But action is the antidote. Every time you act in alignment with your truth, you reinforce that truth. You strengthen the pathway. You build the muscle of belief. And the more you believe, the more you do. The more you do, the more you achieve. It's a feedback loop transformation. But it starts with movement, not motion for motion's sake, but movement that aligns with your deepest purpose. You've got to become obsessed with follow-through. Anyone can start. Anyone can get inspired. Anyone can write down a dream on January 1st. But how many people are still grinding on that dream in March? When no one's watching, when the hype is gone, when it's boring, messy, uncertain, or overwhelming. That's where the breakthroughs happen. Not in the peaks, but in the persistence. Not in the big wins, but in the daily disciplines. That's where you create a life that's built, not borrowed. You've got to build systems around your goals, not just wish for outcomes. Systems create structure. Systems remove emotion from the process. When you rely on motivation, you're a slave to how you feel. When you rely on systems, you show up no matter what. That's how greatness is built. That's how dreams go from invisible to inevitable. Not through hype, but through habit. Through getting in the arena every single day and doing the work, whether you feel like it or not. This isn't about perfection. It's about pursuit. It's about staying in motion. It's about making the call, sending the email, showing up to the gym, writing the page, filming the video, asking for the sale, speaking your truth, applying for the opportunity, taking the leap, even when your voice shakes. Especially when your voice shakes. Because those are the moments that build you, that define you, that become the turning points in your story. People will doubt you, let them. People will criticize you, let them. People will question your choices, let them. Their noise has nothing to do with your path. Their doubt is not your burden. Their fear is not your future. The only voice you need to answer to is the one inside you, the one that knows who you are and what you came here to do. Listen to that voice, and then act relentlessly, ruthlessly, without delay, here to live on autopilot. You're not here to repeat the script. You're here to break patterns, to build, to rise, to lead. And that begins the moment you stop waiting for permission and start giving yourself the green light every single day, no matter what. So here's what it all comes down to. Your life is yours, not your parents', not your peers', not society's, yours. And you weren't put here to play a role in someone else's script. You were put here to write your own, to live on purpose, in truth, with fire in your soul and conviction in your steps. But to do that, you've got to recognize the lie you've been living. You've got to break free from the weight of other people's expectations. You've got to get radically honest about what you truly want, not what's popular, not what's safe, but what's real. You've got to understand the devastating cost of conformity, the spiritual death that happens when you trade your authenticity for approval. And you've got to rediscover that power, that light, that voice within you that's been silenced for far too long. This is your wake off the layers, to commit to the deep, messy, beautiful work of self-discovery, to stop asking for directions from people who've never been where you're going, to stop hesitating and start moving with relentless action, with absolute clarity, with the kind of courage that shakes the ground beneath your feet and ignites everything around you. Because once you decide to stop living someone else's life, the real journey begins. And it's a journey not just of achievement, but of alignment. Not just success, but significance. Not just existence, but aliveness. You were not born to blend in. You were born to stand tall, speak truth, love boldly, and lead a life that is fully, unapologetically yours. So take the wheel. This is your path. Claim it. Live it. Own it. Thank you for listening. Now go live it.